Kind of looks like a mini trucking era type thing going on here, but it's actually on the cherry picker. I'm not saying that there's a single thing safe about this, but I'm saying it worked for one guy. I'm gonna start prepping these wheel well liners for Raptor liner. Also, you have to clearance this structure beam in the bottom of your bed. The C-notch plates actually stick up taller than the frame, so they're gonna need space here. Also had to cut this relief out for the rear diff, and then there's this one. So I'm not concerned about structure here. The span is, you know, not terribly long. We're certainly not going to be hauling a bunch of gravel or bricks or anything like that, so that's not so much a concern. But I do want to weld in these coupons basically back to here, because there's a potential that if the bed did flex here in the middle, I would want it to make contact to something pretty solid on that frame rail. So we're going to patch those up, clean these wheel wells as well, and tolerance them a little bit because of the tires are going to need a little more space. And then Raptor line this beam and in those inner fenders. Few little just spot welds on the top and bottom of both of those, so that's gonna give us the strength that we need if it does make some contact there. Also looks nice to have it a little more boxed in. So now I'm gonna finish cleaning this stuff and cleaning this stuff up, and then start Raptor lining. Well, I absolutely love that Raptor liner. Super easy to use. It's pretty inexpensive, and it'll make you look like a hero as far as the finished product. Keep it in mind, if you ever do use this product and you maybe notice that you're striping it some, when you do want to let it tack between coats, but you can just move the gun further back and sort of dust it from a distance, and it'll sort of uniform out. Looks pretty good. And we did trim and roll these in a little bit because it is still going to be tight because we're getting a narrowed axle, an inch narrower than stock, which will bring that tire to here. Actually, I think the tire will contact the leaf springs before it can be moved in a full inch. So that wraps up the bottom of the bed. That'll be ready to go on whenever we're ready. These can cure because we're starting on the coolant system, and we're gonna need these to be, well, at least the passenger side installed so we can know about our hose routing. I feel like I keep striking out with these LS Swap radiators. This is from Cold Case, clearly, and it is the direct LS Swap replacement for the OBS trucks. And there's a handful of things that are gonna cause you some trouble. First of all, this structure is actually taller than where like these mounting tabs are. So these make contact before those. Also, you can see like where it's making contact on the radiator support before it even sits in the rest. Where see those two holes is where the mount is actually supposed to be. So what I did was I bought these little isolators and cut them down to sit in the channel. And this is where the other mount typically is from the factory. But I needed to raise that radiator up, or at least get it to rest on the isolators instead of touching the bare metal. So that's the method that I used. So this is the Dorman part number that I bought from Amazon to get at least some mounts that I could cut down. Also, I had to relieve these here and here because of where the lower shroud bolts are that protrude through this portion of the radiator support. So you're gonna have to make room for those. Also, I trimmed this lower shroud. They found like using a hacksaw was pretty easy to do. It's also got some trimming on that edge to not make contact against the fins on the radiator, because that will eventually cut in there and wear through. Modified this upper shroud a little bit too. I had to trim a little bit off of there and a little bit off of here because it was making contact. There could be some more trimming done if you want this to fit absolutely perfect. Overall, it just doesn't fit well. It's definitely not a bolt-in situation. For the plumbing, we'll start with the most basic stuff. This is a 1/4-inch heater hose that I bought on Amazon. So that was super convenient. Also, I bought this Evil Energy part number. This is basically a -4 or a 4AN that goes to 1/4-inch hose. This is a 1/4-inch MPT that goes to 1/4-inch hose barb. So that will thread into the bung that's in the radiator. For your steam port, you just take that little plug out right there and then bolt it in place. And then I have the ICT Billet steam vent kit, the softline kit, so that other one will go right there. Of course, you're gonna need 3/4 and 5/8 heater hose. You can buy these links. This is a 6 foot of each from Amazon, and they're the Gates. There's your part numbers. And they are the safety stripe hose, which I really like this Gates hose because it's kind of thin walled on both of them. We'll also, of course, have to have a 3/8 hose to go from the overflow spout to where the factory overflow tank is gonna live, back in its original home. And once we get the shroud and the radiator and stuff all buttoned up, we can start concerning ourselves with our upper and lower hoses. All right, so we've got this all buttoned up. By the way, this is a new clutch and fan. You don't really need a new fan, but I would always recommend using a new fan clutch if you're gonna run a mechanical fan that you get from a salvage. It may have 500,000 miles on it, and those things go bad and you start having heating issues. So it's worth spending a little bit of money on doing that. So the radiator's installed, the shroud. Now we can get some wire and start trying to mock up what those will look like, the radiator hoses, that is. I put our condenser in here. That's from LMC Truck. This is our Hayden transmission coolers. The largest one they sell, I don't remember what the part number is, but if you can fit it, use it, because no one's ever been broke down on the side of the road for having low transmission temps. So typically I'll take a coat hanger and cut it down, and then I'll mark on the ends what the diameter is. This one, about 1.5 inches would do both ends. And then if you can sweet talk the guy at the parts store to let you walk in the back and kind of hold this up against some hoses and see if you can make it work. These are the two we came up with from our local O'Reilly. There's a Master Pro part number, and then here's a Gates part number. And because it has this little mesh on it and it's a Gates, this thing was like 2.5 times more than this hose was. So we're gonna see if we can't manipulate these and cut them down to fit on our little LS swap. And first of all, just make sure we got our diameters right. We can make that go over. And this one, ooh, this one's gonna require quite a bit more cutting if we can make it work. Ooh, that whole thing moved. Yeah, we're gonna wanna cut some of this. Come close to touching that frame rail, but it might not. We'll see. That's actually gonna fit. That'll fit pretty good. So here is the upper hose, Gates 22-926 is actually what I ended up going with, because it does have the 1.5 inches on one end and 1 5/16 inches on the other. The guy at the parts store just pulled up his catalog of hoses that do that. I'll probably go ahead and transfer this little sleeve over to it since it's gonna touch the fan shroud. I can't return this expensive one now that I cut it. I'm just gonna be a good human and throw that somewhere in a pile. I may use it one day. Also, out in my shed, I went and got the factory AC lines. I'm gonna clean those up. It's a good time to install those. I bought all new O-ring kit from LMC Truck. I also ordered a new orifice tube. I wanted to get those AC lines ran, get those fed through here before. Once I get the AC lines, I'll bolt that inner fender in place. Then we can start routing our coolant lines. kind of to see where everything lays. Get this finished installed, and then we can start putting distilled water in there, which is a pro tip. I know I've used it in another video before, but if you're doing a cooling system, there's no reason in wasting antifreeze to find any leaks or anything and then have to drain the system. If you use distilled water, it's a good flush process as well. But if you do find a leak and you have to drain it, you can just drain it in your driveway. Also, you can drain it down, like drain whatever's in the radiator, and then just put the concentrate in there, coolant-wise, and it'll mix itself. That orifice tube, it goes inside this joint right here. Just pull that one out, put the new one in. Yeah, that's why you want to change it. So I've installed our upper and lower radiator hoses. I've got the steam port line ran as well. Heater hoses are done. Those are just 5/8 and 1/2 inch, I guess, which is factory OBS and LS water pump. So that worked out pretty good. I have this inner fender in here that we Raptor lined the other day. And of course the battery is set up, overflow tank. I ended up mounting this here because there were holes in this inner fender for that factory airbox standoff that it used to mount to. So this was able to put a little rubber piece under here to seal that and bolt this. So I'm pretty happy with that. Make sure you fill from the upper radiator hose. Otherwise, the water won't really fill into the block and won't get past the thermostat. It's easiest to just hook everything up, fill it from the upper radiator hose, and while you're doing it, you can kind of look in here and see when water's coming from the steam vents into your radiator, so that kind of lets you know that at least the block is topped off. Also, I don't guess I filmed it because literally you just unbolt this from the factory location. The rag joint steering shaft that comes with these, it normally has a rubber boot up here that'll tear as well. This is $45 on eBay. I think it was 50 bucks shipped to my door. It bolts right in. It's for an 84 to 94 Cherokee or an 86 to 92 Jeep Comanche. All right, so we've got more of our front end put on here, this other inner fender and fender, and as you can see, the bumper. And I was able to, once we've got some weight on the front end now, do the alignment, which is not all that complicated to do on your own. I'll go over that in just a second. You can see we ran this little catch can. I think you can get these online, eBay or Amazon. This may be an Evil Energy brand. Just make sure you get one that's vented. If it's not vented, you need to put a vent somewhere in your crankcase assembly. They don't do too well if they're all sealed up. Or if you're running an outlet into like an ingestible intake port, so it breathes that junk in. But if you're doing that, I don't understand why you run a catch can, I guess to separate the heavy stuff from what you rebreathe. But these are done pretty well, and then you want to get one that has a drain on the bottom, so you can check that every so often. Also use did this harness. See here, kind of, it was pretty chunky looking, and I went over it with all of that split loom that we talked about back a couple of videos ago. You can buy this stuff. I get it on Amazon, different sizes, and like hockey tape. So that is cleaned up and installed, and it looks really nice. When you lower them as much as we have here, what tends to happen is you get a lot of camber. The top of the wheel is leaned in, and there's only so much adjustment here. You can see I've basically moved this completely the farthest outboard, and no one ever did the knockout and put an adjuster on the back of that, the back mount of the control arm. So it's centered. This side is all the way out as well, and all the way out in the back. I may have to make some changes there. It still has a little lean in to it. It's not completely terrible, and you know, we trim these fenders to where there's really not much concern about them making contact. If they go up anymore, there's room for them to tuck in. Then I usually will lay like a straight edge or a long metal ruler like I have across this wheel and kind of see where it points towards the back of the truck and just give it a little bit of toe in. It's hard to measure a little bit, but it gets the stuff pretty close if you're gonna align it in your garage for doing test drives. We definitely have something going on with our engine. I would probably lean more towards the ignition system. When I start the truck, it doesn't start real easy now, and when you do get it running, it wants to die. I have ran it long enough to make sure my coolant level, which is, you know, just distilled water, transmission fluid is topped off. It needed like another 4 quarts from when I filled it originally, so total of 12 quarts went into this $700 R4 with this size cooler. So we've got an ignition run problem. No way to know for sure. I did buy new Holley coil harnesses because you guys remember those Speed Engineering ones were total junk and wired wrong. And so I was using the stock, well, they weren't stock, they're what came with this engine, but these things were pretty crusty. Anytime they hold shape like that, they've been through a few heat cycles. But I'm gonna try to get it started and put it on the infrared and see which ones aren't running correctly, and maybe borrow some loaner coils to test and see if it is in fact the coils or some other problem. Not super easy to look at. I don't know if you guys can tell, but the front one's hot, the next one's hot, the third one is not. So there's like, literally that's the tube you're looking at there. Same way on the last tube. So 6 and 8 are cold, 2 and 4 are hot. 1 is hot, 3 is hot. This one is for sure not hot. Yeah, so 6, 8, and 5 seem to be dead. So by swapping the connector here and swapping the spark plug, now this coil will be running number 4 cylinder, and this coil will be running number 6 cylinder. So we can tell if this one is cold now and this one gets hot, we for sure have a coil problem. I understand why, but it appears that we picked up another cylinder just by swapping. Oh wait, is that hot? Man, it's so hard to see. Just to see if that number 8 is firing, because I can confirm for sure it was not getting hot on the header primary. I hooked up a test light. I do not have the fuel pump. Yeah, fuel pump's disconnected. Just to see if it's getting fire at the plug wire. So that tells me the coil is at least firing. I don't know accurately or not. Let's test another one. Yeah, so maybe we pick up new plugs tomorrow and change those out and see if it's that simple. By the way, for some of you younger viewers, this is what's called a timing light. You connect this to your plug wire, connect that to the battery leads, and it flashes every time current is sent through your spark plug wire. As I changed the spark plugs and went ahead and changed the oil, it smelled a little fuel rich, like washing past the rings, and it was over full. So definitely an issue. So I'm checking these timing tables. Any of you guys experts out there about these carbureted LSs? Here's where I've got this curve set. And also I went ahead and turned off that idle timing control. I'm afraid that may be causing it to hunt around a little bit. Let's see. Also just put the map at flat 0. Even though I did hook the map sensor up to the carburetor, I don't want anything playing with my timing right now while I'm trying to get this thing to run correctly. So there are no adjustments there. Temperature, even if the retard switch was to get hit, or the launch switch would get hit, it's not going to do anything there.
So we're gonna try that and see if we can get a tune out of this trombone.
No outro.